So my name is Naila Kira. I'm a mother of two boys, 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. I live in the UK at the moment, in Coventry. I work as a children social worker. I've lived in the UK for the past 16 years, sorry, 16 years. So yeah, I'm originally from Rwanda. I was raised in Rwanda in the suburb area called Gikondo, in the capital city of Kigali. I was 6 years when genocide started in Rwanda. Yeah. Well, at home, within the gates, it was lovely. Within the gates, when we are with our parents, siblings, it was lovely. It was a warm house with a lot of laughter, with a lot of humor. My father was very had a really good sense of humor, so it was a lively home, very close family. But when we went outside the gate, it was different. We were being, as I don't know if you know the story of Rwanda, but if you were Tutsi, you were being discriminated everywhere you went, whether it's in school, whether it's in the playground, you were being discriminated. And so there was that fear every time we had to go to school, not knowing what's going to happen, if it's going to be a good day, if you're going to make good friends, if you're going to make friends, or if you're going to come back not picked on or not being hit or not. So it was kind of a worry when we went outside, but when we were home, it was lovely. It was a mixture of childhood. It was a mixture of where you have this lovely home, where you're loved, where your parents are doing everything they can to give you that love and protection and meet your needs, really, in a country where they're also limited and worried, sick every day if you're going to survive or if you're going to be picked on. And they had no answers, because we used to say, why do we have to be why do they have to pick on if we are Tutsi? What's the difference? And they didn't have answers, so it was quite hard for them, bless them. But they reminded us that we were loved. They reminded us that we were special, and that was the main good thing. Yeah, so it was a mixture of the love at home, in the home environment, and the trauma of going outside, the fear of every day, and the uncertainty of what's going to happen. Well, myself, I wasn't that much, because I studied in a different school from my siblings, which is I studied in a more of a Congolese school, and I didn't live much in Rwanda like my siblings did. But I remember when before I changed to going to a Congolese school, which is like a more French school. We used to stay. I was in the same school with my sisters, and sometimes they would pick you and say, if you're Tutsi, stand up. And sometimes we didn't know what that meant. And if you stayed sitting up, you would stand up, and you'd be punished, physically hit by teachers if you weren't standing, because they would take it that you're disrespecting them. So it was not very nice, and children would laugh at you. They would laugh at your nose. They would laugh at because you're the only one standing up. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable, and I didn't cope well with it, because when I was young, my parents sent me to Kenya to my auntie. So when I came to this, it was so new to me, and I couldn't cope. But my siblings were more like used to it, but I couldn't cope. My mom was a housewife. But my dad worked for Egyptian embassy in Rwanda, but then she was also we used to call him like a humanitarian person as well. After work, he was a person who wanted to engage with orphans and look really humanitarian acts. I don't know how to explain it, but professionally he worked with Egyptian embassy, where he was like an admin there, and after that he was promoted into a director in one of the he was like a project manager in there. Well, I do, but we were limited in walking around, but it was lively. But then you would go out live. It's a city, but I was young as well, so I didn't go out much. But it was limited, and it was it's different from now, really completely different. You didn't go into town with confidence and you were scared. You didn't know if you would come back. But like when we went with our parents, we didn't feel anything, but you could tell that our parents were more worried about what is going to happen to them, who is looking at them. So it wasn't, I can't remember much really about that time. Yeah. When we left home is more like going to family members, coming back home, and that is the more memory that I have really. And my best memories is with my grandma. My grandma, she lived in Bugesera. I don't know, it's one another, it's in a place called Narama, which is another place that there was a lot of massacres as well during the genocide against the Tutsi. So she, yeah, I used to enjoy, by the time you finish school and you're going to go on holiday, when you're in holiday, you knew the best, that on that day you were excited because you were going to go to grandma. I was very, very close to my grandma, and very beautiful, really, with gray hair. Usually, you know, I can't remember visually how she looked, very kind, and the warmth. And that's where most of the time we felt more safer, because we are in that environment where we're just playing. And with my grandparents, they were not bothered because they were more like they lived that experience for a long time, that they normalized it more. And she cooked in these pots, like traditional pots. It's like clay. They mold them in the clay, and she used to cook something. I love matoke, so it's she used to cook like beans and matoke in there, and it was beautiful. And granddad as well. Granddad would sit there and tell us all these stories, like back then, you know, he will repeat the same stories whenever we went there about how the coronation started, how we went into being from the king to the republic, and who we are and why we are being treated the way we're treated. But it didn't make sense. Sometimes we just said, oh yeah, fine, but yeah. But it was lovely. I remember in 1990, 1990, that's when I realized something was up. During genocide, I was not in Rwanda there, but because my parents had to move me and my older siblings. So in 1990, that's when I was 6 years old. My dad realized that tension was starting. We were being picked on. There was that atmosphere that we couldn't understand. We could tell from home that something was going on, but I was very young. But because of my features and being older, my dad started taking us. Well, his plan was, I'll take fewer so that we don't. It's not alarmed that we're trying to escape the country. So I'll take the older ones first. So my mom took me to the neighboring country called in Uganda. When the tension started, though I did not understand what was going on, my parents were planning for us to go to Uganda. So that what my dad's plan was to take us out of the country slowly, just to avoid creating a tension and asking what's going on. Because it was already starting, because that year, I remember my dad was taken away from our home and he didn't come back in 3 days. And I remember hearing vaguely when he was talking to our mom, is like, oh, they've said to me that I've survived today, but I don't know if they take me again, if I'll survive. So we didn't understand who is who, what are they talking about. So they were trying not to scare us. So they kept us really away from such conversation most of the time. But it grew, the tension was really much. It was a Saturday, I remember, and my grandma came to Kigali and my granddad, and they took that morning. My mom was doing my hair, you could tell that she's in pain in her eyes, and my dad, you could see that he's pacing up and down. Yeah, then they told us, me and my older sister, that we had to go to Uganda that day, and then my mom would explain to us why. So we left school didn't have that plan. We didn't know why. My grandma came to me and said, I remember she was saying, remember, you're my brave girl. You'll be fine. Remember to pray. This might be the last time you ever see me. You're my brave girl. You'll be fine. And so we realized, actually, maybe things are more than we thought. So on our way, my mom explained to us that the tension between the Hutu are really starting to kill Tutsis in a way that it is not understandable. Their dad had been taken. We saw him back, but we don't know if this is going to continue. Hence why we want to try to take fewer, to try and escape if we can. So hence why me and my older sister were chosen. The plan was then they'll bring others slowly. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Because my mom went back after dropping us to our families in Uganda. When she went back, that my dad was arrested, and then their passports was confiscated, so they never had a chance to come out again. And that was the last time I saw my dad. My sisters stayed there. My older sister went back actually. She couldn't serve because I had been in Uganda before. I had been in Kenya. We had families, Uganda and Kenya. I had been there before because I grew there. When I was there before, up in from Uganda to Rwanda with my parents and my auntie. So I had lived there before. I was used to the area, to the country. But my sister struggled. My older sister struggled, and she went back to Kigali with a family member took her back to Kigali, but I stayed. So in Rwanda, they stayed there. They were going through same. My dad was being taken one, and then he brought back. Sometimes beaten, sometimes abused, sometimes he would be okay. So it's something they went through until the genocide in 1994. During that time, my sisters, everyone was at home. I was in Uganda on my own. I was in a boarding school. Then we had the airplane was shot or was, I don't know what happened to the airplane anyway, but yeah, that's when we realized actually things are worse. But we knew that the FPL had already gone into the country. They were trying to conquer, to take on, to bring freedom for people to go back home. So the war had started in 1990, October 1990. So I was aware about that. It went on 1990, but in 1993, end of 1993, that's when we realized things were even getting bad. Because there is a time my dad was taken for a week. We didn't know where he was. So we were communicating with mom. It was that scary moment, every moment. From 1990 to 1994, people lived in fear, not knowing if your parent is going to come back, not knowing if he goes to work, is he coming back, not knowing who your neighbors are. Our neighbors started becoming, the neighbors we called friends, they became the ones that actually now were pointing fingers to us, telling us how we are, telling my family how they are cockroaches and they deserve to die. So it was different from, from hearing from my sisters as well. It was harder than it was before 1990. We were scared already to play outside, but this time it was more like staying in the home, more prison in your own home. In 1994, I remember on the 10th, that's when my dad was killed, on the 10th of April. Sorry, I thought I can't manage this. So sorry. He was the Hutu came to our home. So they were calling him out, they came, as usual. This wasn't the first time they had come. They had come before, 3 days before, when the plane crashed on the 6th. They came on the 7th. And they started already warning him. They said, you get prepared. You have the beautiful girls. We're going to rape them in front of you. We're going to rape your wife in front of you. So those things. So he was already in fear. So on the 10th, because he knew what they were planning to do. So when they came on the 10th, they were shouting his name, banging on the gate. So he went in front. He went before my mom, and he told my mom, you need to find a way to run, because this is it. We don't know if we're going to survive this. You need to run with the kids as much as you can, or you need to hide. I'm going to distract them. I don't know if I'll come back. Whatever it is, I'm going to distract them as much as I can. So my dad was quite a big-headed person as well. He could, so he was like kind of exchanging words with them, but he was trying to buy time for my mom to run with my sisters and my little brother. He was young, he was 1 year old. So but one of my sisters was hiding in like in a tree in the garden. We had this big garden, so because everybody was scared, that's why she could think of to go and hide. So my dad, they took my dad, chopped him into pieces, and my sister was watching that. They left him bleeding just in front of our gate. He didn't die straight away. He was chopped, like, from what my sister says, he was chopped into small pieces, like he was just left naked. My sister was watching that. She saw everything. My mom couldn't find my sister. She couldn't go back and pick my sister. She had to save the other one. But bless her, she was just in the tree watching everything happening to her dad. My dad didn't die straight. He was, of course, he was fighting for his life. It was 11 in the morning. When things calmed down, my mom told us that she came back later and he had already died, but he struggled a lot. It took long. My sister couldn't even calm down. She was scared. She didn't think she was watching him struggling with the breath. My mom came back, saw my sister, took my sister, but my dad was already dead. All they could do was she got one of the shoulders she had and covered him because they had taken everything. That's how evil they were. And sorry if I've used that word, but cold-hearted, that you kill somebody, you leave them in a very indecent way, no respect at all. He took off, he was wearing a blue jean, mom said, and the jumper, and he used to love his watches a lot. He was wearing, and that's all that, instead of taking a watch, they cut his hand off to take the watch off, cut his, left him really then they didn't respect his privacy, if I can say that. So yeah, he died on the 10th. My mom kept running, looking for refuge with my sister. And then during that time, we lost a number of people, including my uncle, who was living near us as well, who was tortured. And because he had a dark skin and long neck, they cut his neck, and all they do is put his neck on the pole and go around in the city, showing everybody that he's gone. Because he was, when you are like a known guy in the city, in the area, like you're known, this handsome, cool guy. So his fellow friends who were, I think if it's a jealousy thing, I don't know, they were more happier to show, oh, we've killed your cool guy. It was, yeah. So he was killed on the 11th as well. But my mom survived, and my sisters, they survived. Went through so much where they were living, they were being tortured where they were living, whether it's making them do housework or scaring them, if you don't do this, will call them. So they lived in that fear every day of their life. And then my grandma, as I said to you, my grandma was in Haram as well, and she was killed in the church. So she went to church because that's where she thought the refuge would be, but she was killed in that church. My granddad stayed in like it's in the, I don't know how they call, on the side of the road. That's where he was hiding in. I don't know how they call it in English, but yeah, he was hiding under the pavement, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's my family. We lost a number of family members. I can't remember the dates, but in that period from 10th of April or even before, we lost nearly 50 family members. The ones we know, others we don't even know if they're alive or not. Tortured, family members tortured. So yeah, that's. But then good enough when FPL took over. My mom and my sisters were supported to be taken in a place called St. Paul, which is like a refugee place. They were taking people. So we had a front gate where my dad went to of course, to kind of distract the perpetrators, and they went through the back. My mom, they first hid, but then they ran towards, unless I explain it, towards the back of the home, trying to run away from the perpetrators. Yeah.
Who were the perpetrators? Because I've heard that a lot of the perpetrators in Rwanda were neighbors and sometimes so-called friends, people who were familiar.
Yeah.
Was that the case?
Yeah. I remember the person who killed my dad was we used to call him his best friend. They used to sit. They used to sit together in the pub. We were going there, into his home. We were family. We were friends. He was our neighbor. He was. I don't know if he's the one who chopped him, but he was among the group. And I think that broke my dad. I think that broke my dad's heart. You know, when you get killed by somebody you don't know, it's not the same as somebody you've shared a meal together, you've shared life together. And you'd think, actually, maybe, sometimes I think when my dad saw him, maybe he thought, oh, now I'm going to be saved because he's here. But no. So they were neighbors. Most of our neighbors were looking for us, or telling people where they can find us, telling people where they can find my family. The person who killed my uncle was, they lived in the same compound. They played tennis together. So they were friends. One of the friend, he was a godfather, like we call them godfathers, or even, it is sad. It was our neighbors. It was those people that we called friends. It was those fathers that we played with their children. They came over for sleepover. We went for sleepover. We went for the lunch together. But when it came to genocide, it turned around. We were cockroaches to them. That is a question I think we all still ask ourselves, and how it makes it even hard to understand is because why? What happened? You ask yourself those questions: how, why, what happened? It is I think it's how they propaganda it. It's how they were. Maybe we lived with them, not knowing that they hated us. I don't know. It is a question that I ask myself every day. Why? Genocide stopped when RPF army took over and stopped genocide. Bless them. I came back, but in the middle, before I came back during genocide, if I go back, I was in Uganda, and the bodies were coming through Lake Victoria. I don't know if you know the geography of Uganda. There was Lake Victoria, so the bodies that were being thrown, the people who were being killed in Rwanda, they were being thrown into rivers, and then they would come into the Lake Victoria in Uganda. And I remember I used to go to Lake Victoria waiting to see if any of them is my family. And that for me was the worst I could. My sisters, my mom, those who are in Kigali have gone through worse. But even those people who are outside the country faced worse, because not knowing, standing at the Lake Victoria, hearing people mocking the bodies, looking at women, children coming through the waters, and you hear people standing there mocking the bodies, and you wonder, what if that is my parent? What if? And it was horrible. But when genocide was stopped, I went back to Rwanda, and I remember going back home and going into this place that was just a land and everything, the house. They had burnt our house. It was just like a field with house burnt, really, if that, I don't know how to call it, but like a construction place. I tend to tell my kids that I wish I'd, you know, I treasure the photos of your childhood because I don't have any. And I can't show you how my dad looked. We've been able to find one picture, which is good, which is a long time. But you know, when people have those memories, that at least they can sit Christmas time and look at memories of the picture. We don't have that. We took, that was taken away from us, taken away from our children. So I came back after genocide. I remember going with my older sisters as well, my half sisters, that we were together in Uganda. We went home. There was nobody. There was nothing, and that was the most scary thing. Where are they? Are they gone? Because we didn't know. We looked. That time when you're going back, we went back. Every step we took, you had to jump a body, or you had to jump a pad of blood. That's how the city was, covered with blood and bodies. I can't imagine what people in Rwanda they were going through. We were traumatized going through just that. We came back, my mom was not there, looked around. We didn't find mom until after 3 days, when one of the neighbors told my mom that we were looking, because we could call, come back, go and look for where to stay, come back, just hoping that we'll meet her. And I remember when we met her, she said, I remember the first thing she was saying, no crying, remember, you're a brave girl. So that itself is like, we weren't even allowed to grieve. We had to be strong. I had to be strong for mom. I had to be strong for my sisters, because I thought, I don't know what they've gone through. But yeah, so we came back and everybody was broken. The country was not the same. As I said, the roads were filled with blood. If not blood, it was filled with parts of bodies, or bodies lying there, children crying without parents, families with wounds where they've been cut and left to die, but then they escaped. A lot of scars, a lot of pain, a lot of emotions, and we didn't know what to say to each other. For the first time, the lovely home that was chatty, and we didn't know what to say to each other. We didn't know what the right words were. Well, the journey, we grew. We had, I think one of the strengths of Rwandese is we understood that this is a tragedy, this is something that has happened, but we have to pick ourselves up to live. And there was this, I don't know if it's this, I don't know what it was, but that unity among many of us, many people, and the courage to go on. We had no choice. We had no choice but to grow. And so my mom, we managed to go back home, families from outside and organizations. We had, there is an organization called Ibuka, which supported survivors. So they supported us to go in schools. We had dedication, like anyone else. But of course, we didn't have the home that we wanted. But my mom had to look for a job. I remember my mom started selling things in the market, going into different places, trying to find a way to survive. It was hard, but she managed. I don't know how she did it. I sometimes don't know how she managed, but yeah, as a community, we had different people, the government as well, support them. As I said, the Ibuka, which supported us to go into education, which was really good. So we grew. I don't know, sometimes I had never thought about that. How did we manage to grow? How did we thrive through all that aftermath? I think it was day by day that we had each other, and we had to remember that we had to be brave, as Dad used to call us, you're my brave girls. we had to be brave and just go on with life and embrace that, yes, we've got the country where we are not discriminated, but we've gone through, at a cost. We got a beautiful country. We weren't being discriminated in school, but it was at a very, very pricey cost of our loved ones that we can never see again. I lived with, when my granddad lived with us, so which was also helpful for my mom. And he used to sell in the shop. You know, we survived. We survived. I don't know how mom managed, but we grew and thrived and survived. So I came into the UK in 2003, 2000, yeah. And yeah, started education here, and yeah, here I am. We have commemoration every year. And as a mother, if I'm looking back, Rwanda is the country that we wanted. Rwanda is the country that my dad would have loved to live in right now. He would be very proud to live in. He was an activist. He was proud to be a Rwandan. My grandma would have loved to live in Rwanda now. But we've got this Rwanda, the beautiful Rwanda. We've got people thriving. We've got it developing. But for me, sometimes I think it was for a cost. We could have achieved this without people shedding blood. We could have achieved this together as a unity. Now people are united. There is no discrimination at all. People are together. There is no saying Hutu or Tutsi or Twa. Yes, I could have it in my mind. I'm not gonna lie to you that I don't have it in the back of my mind. That is that a Hutu or Tutsi, but it is not obvious. Like, it's something that was embedded in us, so we're not gonna just leave it or forget it. It's somewhere, it's within our subconscious, but it's not like visible or used, or even if I'm going to ask for a job, or if people are going to ask for a job, they're not going to think, oh, because is she a Tutsi or is she a Hutu? If you're in school, they don't look if you're Tutsi or Hutu. We don't have those identity cards that made you Hutu or Tutsi. If you're walking in the road, you're not going to be picked on and think that it's... So it's that country that our loved ones wanted to be in, to feel part of it, to feel that they belonged. My dad and my family members that died in genocide against the Tutsi did not belong. And now that we belong, they're not here. And that at a cost of just hatred, at a cost of... Because when you ask perpetrators, why did you do it? They don't even say it. I don't even know if they know anything. I remember I went to see a man who killed my dad and he said, oh, if I had to do it, I'll do it again. So there are not even remorse. And you don't know why. You ask him why. They always say, why not? He was a cockroach. How? Wow. You know, it is a beautiful country. Going forward, future-wise, it's a beautiful country. And I love my country, and I take it as an obligation and as a duty for my children to know their history and to know the country and to embrace Rwanda. And they love it. They love it. But sometimes I think we got the country at a cost, and that breaks my heart. People need to understand what colonization is. When Belgium went to Rwanda, what was the purpose of it? When they changed into a republic and started, you know, because this was how did they say? It was a plan. I can't say it wasn't planned, because this is something it never only happened in 1994. It happened in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. No, it was there. And this is, for me, is history, is the people come into other people's country, or people come into the colonization has, I think for me, I'm not very good with history, but one day I sat with my son and he said, I just want to understand the purpose of colonization. What was the need for it? Why was it necessary for colonization to be for Belgium or to go and colonize Rwanda? What was there in for Belgium? What was there for France to support the genocide? What was because we don't know, and that is it is looking at the power. For me, it's power, and power for the countries that are rich to the little countries that then they overpower them, they overpower their mind. It is more of power, I think, and history is full of power. If you look at Never Again, it's more of who is better than who, but we're all human. And it's going in the SAC, as you said, it's in the Europe, it's in Africa, it's still happening now. And as you said, we say never again, but what is never again? Until when? For me, is it we stand every day saying let's never again be never again, but there is still genocide happening in Bosnia. It's still happening even now as we're talking. So what does never again mean? I just think we're not learning, or there is not much put in history for young people to grow knowing what's happening. I don't know. I really don't know. There is that gap in history for young people. It is hate. It is the hate crime. For me, genocide is hate crime. Holocaust was hate crime. It is hate crime, I think. And why is that hate crime? Why is it that you look at me and hate me? What is in history that makes people feel that you are okay to hate the other person? And it's happening. Well, let alone genocide. Look at the everyday life. Look at the Black Lives Matter. What's happening? Look at the children killing each other in the road. That is hate crime. Look at the terrorism. It is more for me hate crime. And I don't know where we're going wrong. I wish I knew where we could change. Or we're not sitting down and having that conversations in our homes. Well, as well is, it didn't happen in my country, so doesn't concern me. My son, because he takes commemoration very serious. He participates in it, and so he was reading the poem at school. He was in year 8, because year 9 is now the year 8, and until he was reading it, that's when they were like, so genocide happened in Rwanda. And he was like, we studied this in history. So it's the attitude towards the lessons, it's attitude towards the young people, the attitude towards the content you're being told and how you take it, the empathy. We're losing the empathy of this history that is being shared, the painful history, for, as you said, for the people who went to the gates of hell and they lived it, they lived the experience of many, and you take it for granted. You don't take it at heart and look, actually, this is not just a drama or some series that we're watching on TV. This has actually happened to people's lives. And I think it's the attitude towards it. We've chosen not to be silent, to be the voice for those that are not here, to pass on, to speak, as much as it's uncomfortable, as much as it's painful to repeat every time. The more we be quiet, the more it perishes, the history perishes, and the more it's going to repeat itself. My son asked me one question, was like, how come we've got the syllabus of Holocaust in history, but we don't have any other genocide in our history lessons? It is like just by passerby, like, when they're talking about Holocaust, they'll say, Rwanda as well, but it's not a syllabus itself or a topic itself to understand. So if we as professionals or as academic people, don't bring that to life, we are limited. As I said, unless you talk to me, or unless there is a commemoration and I go stand and speak about the, because I tend to speak about the unspoken truth the unspoken truth about genocide, the children who were raped by their fathers, the children who are raped in front of their parents, the children who are born out of rape, and they don't know who to. They're hated by their mother because of what. So I speak about that most of the time when I'm speaking, not my story. I speak about those, that the unspoken truth, the impact of genocide, children not knowing their identity, hating themselves when they're still young as well, because they're out of rape or out of an act that this woman or this child didn't take part in. And if we don't put that out and be open and allow children to ask questions over and beyond, and let the genocide be live in the classroom, and have those questions, those difficult questions, never again is not going to be never again.